When the world finally goes quiet, when your phone stops vibrating, and there's nothing left but your thoughts. You sit there staring at the ceiling, wondering why every relationship you touch felt like a war, why you keep giving more than you ever receive, why peace always seems to arrive only when you're finally alone. And in that silence, a realization whispers, maybe being single isn't loneliness, maybe it's liberation. Let me explain why staying single might be the most powerful thing you ever do. You weren't born desperate for connection. Society trained you to be. Scroll long enough, and you'll see it. Find your person. You're incomplete without love. You need someone to feel whole. But here's the truth. Most people aren't looking for love. They're really looking for distraction. A shield. Someone to carry the weight of their unresolved wounds. You probably felt it. You meet someone, and for a moment it feels right, until it doesn't. Suddenly your time isn't yours. Your plans aren't yours. Even your emotions feel hijacked. You start bending, compromising, shrinking, not because it's love, but because you're terrified of losing the tiny bit of comfort they offer. That's not love, that's dependency. And dependency is just a beautiful word for self-abandonment. Here's what psychology actually tells us. Every time you're single, you're in the most empowered psychological state you can possibly be in. Why? Because your mind is yours. Your priorities are yours. Your emotional energy is yours. When you're single and self-aware, you enter something psychologists call autonomous identity consolidation, a fancy way of saying you rebuild who you are without external influence. You're not adjusting your tone to avoid an argument. You're not shrinking your dreams to keep someone comfortable. You're not pretending to be less busy so someone won't feel insecure. In solitude, you learn the truth about yourself. What you want, what you don't want, what you can't tolerate, what you deserve. But most people will avoid this stage at all costs, because facing yourself requires honesty, and honesty exposes everything you've been running from. Let's be honest, most relationships today aren't built on love. They're rebuilt on fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of being judged, fear of being the only single person in the room. This fear creates a dangerous psychological trap. You start tolerating behavior you would never accept if you truly valued yourself. You justify disrespect. You ignore red flags. You settle, because settling feels safer than solitude. But here's the psychological twist. When you settle out of fear, you destroy the very thing you're looking for. Peace. You end up in a constant loop of stress, anxiety, and emotional confusion. You stop growing. You stop dreaming. You stop evolving. And the worst part? You begin to believe that the wrong person is the best you'll ever get. That's not love. That's self-sabotage disguised as companionship. Let me give you a real example. No names, just truth. A man told me the story. He spent years in a relationship that drained him. Every argument felt like walking through fire. Every compromise felt like a piece of himself dying. But he stayed. Why? Because he didn't want to be alone. Because he believed being chosen was worth more than being at peace. When the relationship finally ended, he felt lost, confused, broken. But then something surprising happened. Silence stopped feeling scary. He started sleeping better. He started thinking clearly. He started rediscovering who he used to be before love became a battlefield. And one day he told me this. Being single brought me back to myself. I didn't know how exhausted I was until peace walked back into my life. That's a transformation solitude creates. Not loneliness, but clarity, strength, identity, power. Modern relationships are unstable for one psychological reason. People don't heal before they attach. You're dealing with unprocessed childhood trauma, insecurities, fear of abandonment, compulsive validation seeking, emotional immaturity. So what happens? Two wounded people try to use each other's medicine and call it love. Here's the truth. If someone hasn't healed, if someone hasn't learned emotional discipline, if someone hasn't developed self-awareness, they can't love you. They can only depend on you. And dependency eventually turns into resentment. Resentment turns into control. Control turns into manipulation. That's why staying single is powerful, because it protects you from becoming someone's emotional bandage. There's a shift that happens when you choose solitude with intention. It's subtle, but it's real. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your value. You stop giving discount to people who haven't earned access to you. In solitude, you begin to understand something critical. You are not hard to love. People are just poor at choosing love. You realize you don't need someone to pick you. You don't need someone to validate you. You don't need someone to complete you. You realize you're already whole, and relationships are supposed to be additions, not repairs. Psychologists call this secure independence, a state where your emotional stability isn't dependent on another human being. This is where masculine mental strength is born, not in relationships, not in love, but in solitude, in the silence where you learn to face yourself without running. Staying single isn't about avoiding love. It is about preparing for the right kind of love. Alone is where you build discipline, purpose, vision, boundaries, self-respect, inner peace. Alone is where you learn how you want to be loved and how you refuse to be treated ever again. Solitude is a teacher, a healer, a sculptor. It breaks you down and rebuilds you into someone untouchable. When you master solitude, you stop fearing the wrong people because you finally know the power of walking away. So why is staying single the best thing you can do? Because it returns you to yourself, because it forces growth, because it protects your peace, because it teaches you what love is and what it isn't. Staying single isn't wasting time. It is investing in your identity, your future, your emotional intelligence, your strength. You're not behind. You're not incomplete. You're not missing anything. You are simply becoming the version of yourself that won't settle for anything less than what aligns with your soul. And when you finally choose someone, you will choose them from a place of clarity, not fear. That's the power of solitude. That's the psychology of strength. And that is why staying single might be the best thing you ever do.